Alright guys, this is D89 here. I figured out how to get my coolant temperature gauge to work off of my Arduino based fan controller that you can see down here. The display is not currently on it because I'm doing troubleshooting and stuff. So anyway, the unit is going to sit right here, and that's what that board is for, to kind of jam it in here, and it's going to sit right up on top of my trailer brake controller, and it'll be really convenient, you know, so that I can keep an eye on the display while I'm driving around, you know, for a while to make sure that everything's set up the way I want it set up. But it's not going to stay there forever, and eventually the display is going to come off of it, and it's going to go up underneath the dash where you can't see it. And I thought, well, you know, the worst part about that, or the sucky part about that, is that then I lose my super duper accurate coolant temperature readout, and I'm stuck with this piece of junk that, you know, a lot of you that have been following my thread know that when the needle's at the 190 line and the thermostat has cycled, that 190 degrees that it's reading can be plus or minus, you know, about 10 degrees from what the actual temperature at the thermostat housing is, and I'm not okay with that. I don't like that inaccuracy. So I figured, well, hey, I've got a Arduino. I might as well, you know, have it drive the gauge, because you can use PWM to replicate a variable resistor. So basically, it's a really basic circuit. There's an RC filter, and basically the pulse width modulation just switches a transistor to ground, so I can change the duty cycle on that and have it simulate variable resistance to ground. So here you can see I've got my I already figured out, you know, what different positions on there equate to as far as the PWM duty cycle. So right now it's at 0 because I just restarted the controller. So I'm going to go in here. This is the serial monitor window. I can send commands to the Arduino with this thing. So G is my letter code for the gauge PWM duty, and it's a value between 0 and 255 because it's a 256, or it's a, excuse me, an 8 byte or bit, whatever. Anyway, so the first graduation on the gauge is the 140 line, and that works out to a duty cycle of 77. So we're going to send that command, and then it tells me that it's been set, and then we're at the 140 line. And now the next line is the next graduation is what I call the low sweep line, and that requires 115. So we're going to go to 115, and you can see it go dink, and now it's at the low sweep line. And there's the 190 line. And the high sweep line. And there's the 230 line. And then if I set this to 255, which is the max value, that's as high as it'll go. And there is I believe I mentioned there's an RC filter circuit, so it can run here all day and not fry anything, because there is a resistor in there that limits the current. So now I'll set it back to 0, and you can see it drop like a rock. And so now what I got to do is I'm going to come up with a formula so that these, and I haven't decided on these degrees yet. Aside, I mean, the 140, 190, and 230 line are kind of obvious, but the other two graduations that aren't labeled, I haven't really firmly decided what I want those to be yet. But basically, the way it's going to work is that the motion between the graduations is going to be linear. So the needle, and I forgot to mention, the needle here is at rest. It will start moving at 100 degrees and then be square on the 140 line when it's at, 140 degrees. So between the graduations, it's going to be fully linear, but the graduations themselves are not linear, so it's going to be kind of a fudgy thing. But as long as I know what the numbers are and that it's linear between the numbers, that's going to satisfy my need for a super accurate readout, because I'm a prick about gauges. So, and I'm not done putting the truck back together yet, but you can kind of see what I got going on here. The radiator that I was going to use, excuse my messy shop, is a piece of junk. I'm really not happy about this, because this thing was $170 plus tax, and these tabs are not in the right spot. They're offset to the side about a 1/4 inch, and the width of the slot here, top to bottom, is like when I set the shroud on here, and I set the stock shroud on here too, actually, just to make sure that it wasn't a design issue on my part. The tabs on the slots hit perfectly here. They won't actually go inside there. And the distance on the core here is about 1/16 of an inch narrower than my stock radiator. And so I decided to put my stock radiator back in. And I'm going to return that piece of crap. So I don't know. I'm hoping that, if I make sure to, you can't really see. Oh yeah, you can. I stuck the pressure washer wand down in there and got what I could, and it's better than it was, but it's not awesome. And my hope is that, with properly mixed coolant, all new coolant, and then of course the coolant filter itself, I'm hoping that the coolant will kind of dissolve those deposits, and then they'll get trapped in the filter, is what I'm hoping. I don't know if that's actually going to be how it works, but that's what we're going to go with for now. So the sensor, this is the sensor I'm using. This is the stock coolant, the stock transmission oil temperature sensor out of this truck. And I bought a new stock line. This is not a stock line. I bought a new one. And when I got it, it was rusty inside to the point that the rust was flaking off. And I was like, yeah, I don't want that going into my heater core. So I went down to my hydraulic shop, and I took the tube down there, and I told them, make me one of these out of stainless. And they did it for like $35. And then I welded this bung on here and painted it. And as far as the ends, what they did that I thought was pretty cool is, I don't know if you can see down here, this is a compression ferrule. They soldered those on to this pipe so that the hose won't slip off, and I thought that was pretty clever. This tube you can see down here, this is the discharge line that's going to go to my coolant filter, and it ties in. Can you see it, sort of, right there? Let me get the phone down in there. It ties into the block right here. This is the stock port that used to feed the transmission heat exchanger. I deleted that, of course, when I did my manual swap. This was plugged for a long time, and then I decided that, I could. What I did was I cut the last, 8 inches or so off of my old heater tube, and the bent end of it is up here. And I should have taken a picture before I installed it, but I didn't, and now it's installed. So, yeah, but it's going to dump out right here. And there's actually, you can see there's a really good range of motion here for it to be, not be hitting things. So I'm going to tie into these two for my coolant filter, and then the filter itself, let me find the thing. This is the Baldwin base. and filter itself. And basically it's all 3/8 pipe thread, and they give you a bunch of different ways that you can configure this thing for your application. Basically, male elbow, ball valve, nipple, or hose barb, excuse me. There's a valve on each side, so when I change this thing, I don't need to drain all the coolant out of my engine. I just valve it off, change the filter, open the valves back up, and you know, this loses such a little volume that I'm thinking I can just kind of top it off, you know, top the overflow tank off after a couple days, and everything should be fine there. So where this is going to go is behind my bumper. There you go. So it's going to mount to the front right here, and I need to jack with the angles on that, on those, you know, fittings a little bit, but it's pretty much just going to go right there, and it's fully protected from the underneath, or the underneath of it is fully protected by the bumper, so nothing bad's going to happen there. Yeah, coming along. Been kind of a headache, but we're getting there.